Hey everyone, it's Ari Honeyford with the Awkwardly Zen podcast, and I am super excited because my friend Charles Cox, the Denver medium, is that right? Denver psychic? The Denver psychic, is here with us today. And Charles has been such an instrumental part of my path in somebody who I can go to and ask questions. And what I appreciate so much is that there's going to be no sugarcoating when you talk to Charles. So I love that. And thank you for being here today, Charles.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so make sure I get it right because your website is the Denver Psychic. Is that right?
Actually, the website is denver-psychic.com.
Denver-psychic.com. And we'll put that in all the notes, but I want to make sure I don't confuse
I
anyone.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We want them to be able to find you. You can also find Charles on the awkwardlyzen.com partners page as well. So if you forget, you can always check back there. Charles, how long would you say that you have been on this spiritual path?
Well, probably most of my life. And the follow-up question is always, how did that happen?
Hmm.
And I don't know that there is a how to this because I was always interested in this. And born into a Southern Baptist family, I was immediately the black sheep of the family because I just was interested and didn't realize that being interested in anything other than burning with the love of Jesus um, was a bad thing. But apparently, even in grade school, I like ghosts and I was interested in Ouija boards, and my mother's having, an aneurysm right and left because can't you just go to church and be a good kid? And it wasn't about any kind of rebellion. I really don't know where it came from. I've thought about this a lot. I think I hesitate to say this because it sounds so lofty, but I think I came here to do this. And so
Totally.
somewhere as a young kid, this just clicks in. And over the course of my life, I've gotten an opportunity to do this more than anything else. Friends have come and gone, relationships have come and gone, jobs have come and gone, careers have come and gone. Here this is. And you reach a certain point, I hope most everyone does, where those things that are constant in your life, you begin to embrace them.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
love that. Now, I know with you, you kind of went into a very specific part of spiritual work. So can you talk a little bit about being ordained?
sure. So when I was 17, somewhere 16, 17, so I'm really interested in this already, and I'm living in Omaha, Nebraska. I found spiritualist ministers. I'm not really sure how that process came about, but I found spiritualist ministers, drove over to their house, met them, and they were doing a seance every Thursday night in their garage. So at 17, when all my other friends are out drinking and carousing, every Thursday night, I'm at a seance at these old spiritualist minister's house doing seances. I'm 17. So I was introduced young into spiritualism, the faith of spiritualism.
Hmm.
I moved to Colorado to go to college. I found teachers here. I studied with them. And in 1991, I was ordained as a spiritualist minister at a community in central Kansas. It's a 140-year-old spiritualist community. And so that was just on my path. I can't imagine there are only a couple events in my life that I can't imagine who I would be or where I would be had these things not happened.
Yeah.
Had I not been introduced to this church and gone through this process of becoming a minister and then serving for 30 years, I don't know where I would be today. I would certainly be a different person. I don't
Yeah.
know what that would mean for me, but served for 30 years, retired a couple of years ago, and um, I retired. They gave me a retirement party. They gave me a plaque, the whole
Hmm.
bit. But they don't act like I'm retired because they
No.
use me all the time and they need me for stuff. And I'm very much uh, indebted to the board of trustees who have really taken good care of me and supported me. So when one of them calls me up and says, "I need you to come out and teach a class," then I mumble and growl while I'm packing my car up and driving out there to teach a class.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things I love so much about it is talking with you helped me realize that there is spirituality everywhere, right? Because a lot of times we hear within Awkwardly Zen in these rural communities in these areas that nobody gets me. There's nobody like me. And I think this is a perfect example because the church that you work with or the group that you work with is in a very tiny little area, right?
very rural, and they are the oldest church in the county, even older than the Catholic Church. So they are the first church in the county 140 years ago, and this is their legacy. I think to the point you just made, I find that folks don't oftentimes search very far, right? So
Mhm.
you cannot go to your um, church ice cream social this Sunday and try to find people that want to join you in maybe doing some Reiki healing.
Right, right.
It takes some work. It to expand. This is true in your life, right? To expand your circle of friends and your circle of influence, you have to step out of it. And the devil we know is better than the devil we don't know. Oftentimes we'll grumble and whine about, all these people don't support me and love me. Well, go find people that do support you and love you. That's the challenge. That's the path.
Yeah, well, and especially now, with the internet, with the ability to do that. I mean, we are now connected with people worldwide through Awkwardly Zen, and it's crazy. I mean, I have friends in South Africa now, in London, and all of these places that I wouldn't have
Right.
because of the internet. And I think that that has helped take some of the fear out of talking about it. Fear is always, excuse me, fear is always a big thing for me, and for everyone, I think, because I see it so much within the spiritual communities where this idea that I can't talk about this, or I have to hide this about myself, or I can't call myself this, is such a big thing. How in your journey on this, how did you deal with those big moments of fear, or how do you deal with those big moments of fear when they come up?
I don't know that I have them as much anymore. As a younger guy, I've always been fearless. This is just in my life. I'm just fearless. So I have run out into traffic on more than one occasion and gotten run over where people are standing on the sidewalk going, "Oh, I wouldn't have run out into traffic." Well, Mrs. Cox didn't raise a bright kid sometimes. I just run out into traffic. So one of the things I did was I played with terminology about what I did. At one point, probably somewhere in the mid 80s, I was a metaphysician,
Okay,
right? Nobody knew what that meant, right? It's
right?
not really a term that has any like applicable meaning. I have, played with different terms like that. I'm more comfortable at the end of the day with being a medium, and I explain to people what that is and why I'm comfortable with that term. But I part of this is it is like, if you want to use an analogy, it's kind of like clothes shopping, right? Your aesthetic, because I've known you for some time now, your aesthetic, you develop that over time by trying stuff on and see what looks good on you, what colors look good on you, and there's nothing at risk. You go into a department store and try something on, you come out and your best friend is like, "Oh no, baby, don't
To do that.
take that off," right? Like, like I can't wear orange. It just makes me look like a pumpkin. People are like, "Wow, that's great." Um, but all of this is part of the kind of coming out process. You try stuff on, go see. There's something in our culture now that I don't think has always been there. If it has, it's been hidden way down. A lot of people want to get everything in line before they get started.
Absolutely.
Don't just go. You know what? If Tallulah is given an astrology class, go take an astrology class. You'll either like it or you'll meet someone in the astrology class, or you'll all of a sudden you find you like the calculations better than the actual doing the astrology, and you think, well, maybe numerology is my gig, right?
Right.
Right. And so there is no, to get on this path, you got to be on this path. There is no stopping and waiting and um, the whole obsession with, I just need a sign. Oh, Jesus. I just don't know. I, Look, sometimes I've gotten signs. I've gotten signs that have hit me over the head, and there are times where
Right.
I'm wandering in the dark and still ended up at the right place.
Right.
So it is a forward momentum of doing, doing, doing. It's trying different words, right? If you don't like traditional tarot decks, then use some kind of, Lenormand deck
Right.
or any other kind of deck. If you want to read cards, it's I'm all about pushing people out there. The classes that I do are all about, getting people's hands on this work and doing it. Not
Yeah.
about, area that you shouldn't do this if this isn't for you. You'll know whether or not this is for you.
Yeah.
You'll know whether or not it is. So
Yeah,
try
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, I love that. And it was the same for me, right? When I first started, I called myself a tarot reader because that's the only thing I could be comfortable with. There was the
Right.
safety in my tarot cards. And then I went into intuitive tarot reading. And then I was a psychic tarot reader, which I still use sometimes. And
Right.
now when I introduce myself, I'm a psychic. And it took a long time for me to get comfortable with using those terms, but not because I didn't qualify for those terms, but because I was scared of them. I was scared how people were going to react when I said it. And then at some point, you just embrace the whole crazy, right? And you realize that you can't control how other people are going to look at you. And I tell you what, now that I call myself a psychic, I have so much more fun
Yep.
than I did before, because I don't like I'm well aware there's going to be people who don't get it, but there's people who didn't get tarot either. So who cares?
So this is all an exercise in energy work, right? It's you have to find the right words that resonate with you.
In the
Not
moment.
not right in the moment, right? So that you can be that. So
Yeah.
this progression for you of being a tarot reader to being an intuitive tarot reader to being a psychic tarot reader is you kind of honing in on what it is that you really do.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to run into you who you haven't seen in 3 years. You can say, "Well, I'm a psychic," and they're like, "I thought you were a tarot reader." Nobody's
Right.
going to. Nobody knows that stuff. This is always about us, right?
Right.
This is always about our experience and who we are and what you're going to claim.
Yeah.
What, can you claim this?
Well, and I also think, and I use this a lot in my coaching with folks, and I'm sure you do too, that whole idea of just go. Actually, I feel like if we don't just go and we don't just do it, sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves. Like, if I would have gotten business cards made at the beginning when I was just a tarot reader, then I would have had to get new business cards when I brought in other modalities, right? And so that's one of the reasons I love the term psychic, because it's all encompassing. I can do whatever I want. And there's no like, oh, well, that's not what that says, or that's not what you did. And I mean, I still don't have a website. I go off of the Awkwardly Zen site and have a booking thing. And people are always shocked by that. But I figured out as I went along what was important to me and what wasn't important to me,
Yes.
and where I could utilize services that were already in place. And I think that just doing it, just starting to say it out loud is so important.
I help folks that are looking to take that next step, right? To really turn this into a business.
Yeah.
And I have to get them off of Vistaprint completely, right? Because Vistaprint's the devil. I want to get 100 business cards. And as you check out, they're like, but for for $20 more, you can get 1,000 business cards. Then you
Right.
check that out. Then like, but for $5 more, you can get 10,000 business cards.
Right.
No, get the 100 business cards so you can throw
Change.
them in the trash, throw them in the trash. And there are folks that want, because they have money, and I get this, they're investing into their business, right?
Yeah.
They want to, they'll spend $5,000 to have the best website in the world made. No,
Yeah.
no, because it's going to change.
Yeah.
Learn WordPress, WordPress 101, dumb stuff.
Right.
Here's your picture. I'm a psychic. Here's how to get a hold of me.
Totally. It can be
Then
simple.
yes, then add a page, add a blog, right? Let it grow as you grow. This is
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to
I
this.
love
I
that.
want to have all of this in place ahead of time.
Yeah.
Just do it. Get out and
Yeah.
build your business. Don't you can't, I mean, particularly you and I are in the Denver area. You cannot throw a rock without hitting a tarot reader. So it is not very subversive. And people will be like, I'm gonna go rent an office because I'm all serious about this. Well, I hope you can sleep in that office because if you're not making any contacts, then
Right.
people nobody's gonna know you're there because it's not like you're in some little tiny town in Mississippi where everybody knows that's Ari the psychic.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it was funny because I did a podcast recently, and she goes, "Well, where do you read?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I read outside this little crystal store, and I read at this one." And she was like, "You read at crystal stores?" And there was such judgment, and I just laughed, and I was like, "Yeah, like how do you think I meet people? How do I get clients?" Like, reading at a crystal store, reading in these new interesting places, having these pop-up events is how I meet my clients. And so I'm just always so funny when someone's like, "How on earth do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And now, luckily, because my Instagram is actually doing something, I'm meeting people on social media, which is great. But before you have that, you got to put your feet on the pavement.
Go meet some, go, here in the Denver area, there are a number of metaphysical bookstores. Almost all of them have readers in them. Walk in, introduce yourself,
Yeah.
right? Walk into, tiny Buddha place or whatever and be like, I want to read for you. What is that going to take? And they're going to talk to you about what that will take and what they're looking for. And it's about getting out there. It's
Right.
about meeting people, right? It is um, not unlike the dating world, right? It's about meeting people. You
Yeah.
gotta, you can't wait to, nobody meets, I'm gonna say this and then someone will comment in the video. I did, but nobody ever met one person and that was their person.
Right.
Never.
Rarely.
It just doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the same thing with clients. I'm not, I have always felt, particularly in the last couple of years as I've gotten older, not couple, that sounds like I'm just getting older in the last couple of years, but as I've gotten older, I've thought about this. I'm kind of more of an ambassador now, right?
Mm,
So I'm not trying to sell you. I'm not trying to, here's my business card type deal. But when people want, I've got an easy name. Just put in Charles Cox in Google, that Charles Cox Psychic will come up, right?
yeah.
They find me,
Hmm.
but I'm making the contacts. I'm reaching out to people on a regular basis. And that's really the important part of this.
Well, and I think because spirituality is so much more widely accepted now, there are so many more options for that, right? Like there's coffee shops that'll have psychics come in and tarot readers.
Yes.
There's like I was reading outside the crystal store and the person who owned the pet store down the street said, "Hey, if you ever want to read at my store, come read at my store." And I was like, "I am not a pet psychic." And she said, "I don't care." And I was like, okay. All right.
Okay.
So, I think that that's just it is I think we have such a narrow focus sometimes of what we think this industry looks like, but we are making what this industry looks like. We can change it and adapt it all the time. And I think that that's so beautiful. I mean, surely in the time, I mean, I know you're still a very young man, but in the time that you have been doing this, you have seen pretty drastic changes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. In the 80s, ISIS Books on East Colfax, Colorado Psychic Center on North Washington, which is gone. Um, the aura that they had to them, and I don't mean like a psychic aura, but the aura that they have for the community, it was just one hair up from an adult bookstore,
Right.
right? So going in there, you didn't want to, like, you'd go in like late in the afternoon as the sun's going down because you don't want someone walking up and down, driving up and down Washington, seeing you going in that store.
Yeah.
Um, and now, Isis Books on Broadway is just one of the businesses on Broadway right there. And
Yeah.
here's my experience with spirituality. Everyone is on this path. So everyone's on this path. Even if you are a fundamentalist Christian, you're still looking for the same answers that you're looking for and that I'm looking for, right? It's just the words. This is where language is not our friend. And so one of the things, particularly after being a minister for so long, I think that I could talk to anybody about anything. And that has really given me tools to talk to crazy people. I mean, crazy psychic stuff. I mean,
Right. Right.
crazy religious stuff or crazy
All
belief
us
stuff,
woo-woo
period.
weirdos.
Woo-woo
Yeah.
related, right? And crazy religious people, right? Because the truth is we're all on the same path, and it's easy
Totally.
to point and say, well, I believe in this, and this makes me part of the mainstream, which, by the way, I don't even know if there is a mainstream anymore, to be honest.
I don't think,
So,
yeah.
but it makes people feel good, right? I find people to surround myself, and we do this in our community. We surround ourselves with people who believe what we believe because that makes us feel at home. That
Yep.
doesn't make us necessarily mainstream.
Right.
And so people in your life that aren't on this path, you reach out to them using language. If the conversation starts with my spirit guide said to your spirit guide, right, then you probably lost them, right? I was talking to grandma last night on the Ouija board, right?
Right.
You're
Right.
probably just you're probably gonna lose them, right?
Yeah.
But at the core of the spirituality stuff is this empathic connection that we have with people. And when I can speak to someone, either consciously or even unconsciously,
Hmm.
using those kind of tools, I connect with people.
Yeah.
And people like me, they don't know why, and they trust me, they don't know why. Because I'm just being upfront with you. I'm not
Right.
I'm not trying to get you. The one thing that the spiritualist faith taught me, um, we are not evangelical. So a lot of the spiritualist churches around the country, not ours particularly, but a lot of them are getting smaller and smaller. Many of them have closed, and that's because at no point did someone treat it like a business. So
Mm,
big churches, I went to Mile High Church for many years. It's a big church. And part of the sermon is, Ari, if you like the service today, why don't you bring back a friend with you next week?
right.
Never did any of that. And I find that from a sales point of view, that works really well. If you're interested in what I'm offering, you'll come around. If
Yeah.
I'm immediately, hi, my name's Charles. Oh, you were Cleopatra in a past lifetime. And they're not open to that, they run
Right.
screaming. And I've repelled them. I've undone my job as being an ambassador at that point.
Yeah. And the ambassador, I think, is so important right now. And it's part of the reasons why it's spreading, because there are people like you and me, right, who are very friendly and open, and we don't look mysterious and spooky. And good for whoever wants to adopt that.
Right.
And if that's their persona or if that's who they are, beautiful. But like for me, I think one of the things that has built my business, and the same I think for you, I mean, you don't look like a soccer mom, but I do. So when
Right.
I'm sitting out there and I'm doing tarot readings and someone walks by and I look up and grin at them, they're not scared of me. It seems more attainable, right?
Right.
There's this engagement. And I think taking some of the mystery out of this is so powerful. But I am so grateful I live in a time period and I'm doing this in a time period where I can be that
Yes.
person,
Yep.
because all of you who did this ahead, like I have so much respect for those who came before, because we would not be able to have Awkwardly Zen and I wouldn't have the career I do without all of you like fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. In the 80s, um, at somewhere in the mid 80s, somebody uh, threatened Shanti, who owned Celebration Books in Colorado Springs. The fair before it was BMS was Celebration Fair. It was his fair up here. He started all that. He's really on the forefront of that.
Yeah,
Somebody threatened him and said that Colorado has, or Denver County has laws against doing psychic readings. We're going to shut you down. And I had friends that were like, I'm not going to go to the fair. I'm all afraid. There are 100 psychics there. What are they going to do? Round us up in a paddy wagon? Right.
right.
It was just stupid. It was just whatever. People being people.
Yeah.
And I'm
In
like,
fear.
I'm gonna read at this fair because, and fear, absolutely. I'm gonna read at this fair. Nothing happened.
Right.
Because, at the end of the day, it's all about the dollar. I know no one likes to hear that. Everyone's thinking it's, cotton candy and
Right.
unicorns,
Rainbows.
rainbows, right? This big fair, the merchandise mart raises all kinds of sales taxes and all this, it
Yeah.
brings all these people from outside the county into Denver County up at the merchandise mart. Oh my God, they're not going to shut that down.
Yeah.
But lots of times, fear is what fear is. And
Yeah.
for those friends of mine who would not read at the fair because they were afraid, that's their path. But like I said, I just wandered out into traffic. I was ready to get arrested.
Right.
And at that point, I wouldn't have been a spiritualist minister yet. But had I been, you would be interfering with my First Amendment rights.
Right.
I can practice my faith as I want to.
Right.
This is part of my faith.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice for everyone who's looking at getting into this. Find the people who have come before you and watch and learn and lesson and learn and get lessons about what there is available for you and how to handle, because there are going to be some tough situations even now, right? Like the other day, I had a whole group, a youth group, who was right down the street from me, and man, did they want to interrupt my readings, like nonstop. Kids coming by to ask me if we
Right.
wanted to talk about Jesus, want to talk about God. And I was like, I'm great with my relationship with Jesus. I'm great with my relationship with God. And I engaged a tiny bit with a couple of them, just to make sure that they understood that this is not the kind of thing that's actually going to make me want to interact with you and your choices. And don't interrupt my readings. But I think that being able to talk about it with people like you and Kandara and Lori, and hear about what you went through in the past, and then with readers who have been around the area for a long time, it helped me feel more stable on my feet when I was out there, right? So learning from those who've come before, I think, is such an important tool.
I had an opportunity last summer. Someone wandered into a talk I was doing who was religious. I mean, you can wander in, I don't care. And so he's taking me to task. The thing is, he doesn't realize that I've been around. It's not my first barbecue, right? I'm talking
Right.
about stuff when I'm 17. So
Right.
you're if you're coming at me, you think you're going to throw stuff at me that I've not heard before.
Yeah.
So I let him have his say and whatever. And of course, there's a little tension in the room because people think there's some tension, not from me. And something popped into my head that I'm grateful for because I'm not sure where it came from. I just looked at him and I said, do you believe, can I ask you a question? Do you believe in the 10 Commandments? Of course. I said, and the first commandment is, there is no other God before me. And he goes, absolutely. And I said, then really it's just about naming. It's just the name thing, right? There is only one God. I said, and by the way, that's part of the Talmudic history. That's from the Talmud, right? They weren't talking about Jesus.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's
That's
just
not referring to Jesus. It's not referring to anybody.
right.
Ten
Yeah.
Commandment, there is no God before me, one God. And so then we apply these names to it, right?
Right.
So I'm okay if I call it Jesus, but if I call it, Buddha, or I call it Muhammad or whatever, then I'm the devil.
Right.
I don't,
Yeah, I see that on my Instagram videos. I do these little silly, lighthearted videos, and of course, every once in a while, someone pops up and they want to make sure that the people who are watching understand that I am wrong and they are right. And I'm always like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. And I hope if you watch my videos and I say universe and you want to hear God, that you hear God. And I start every speaking engagement with that exact thing of like, I'm going to use universe, but please hear whatever it is you need to hear, because I think we're all talking about the same thing. Uh,
honestly.
and I think that that's so helpful.
I
Well,
mine is backwards. I'm a minister, so I tell people I'm going to use the word God. If you want to
yes,
put in universe, right, spirit,
right.
great white buffalo woman, I don't care.
Absolutely. But don't let it take away from the lessons to learn, because I do think that religions and all of the historical text and all of the keepers of the light and all of the gods and goddesses and all of that, we have so much to learn if we don't allow ourselves to put on the blinders to what is right versus not right.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah, I think that for sure. Well, we're almost out of time, but I do want to touch on just for a little bit here what you do, because you do so much. Charles may be one of the only people I know who does more and schedules as much as we do with AZ. So tell us a little bit about what you offer and what you do.
Not as much as you, but honest to God, right? There's
Well, I
a
also have
if
a
you
team of 40 people who are helping me,
exactly right,
so
right. You got a lot of people
I do.
behind me. I've got people like, I do workshops twice a year. I'm like, wow, okay.
Right.
Let's see. Um, I regular events. We have seances, full moon seances at ISIS Books
Here in
every
Denver.
full moon, so
Yeah.
every 20 and a half days. Um, we've been doing that. It'll be 15 years in October.
Wow.
It's unreal. I look at that. I'm like, I'm not really sure how. This is the power of just doing it. This is the power of just running into traffic.
Yeah.
Just do it. So we did it for a year, and then it turned into 5 years, and it turned into 10 years, and now it's going to be 15 years like that. So it's just great. Do Saturday night seances. I teach classes on psychic development at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts in Centennial, and at Soul Inspiration in North Glen.
Yep.
And I read in my office in Lakewood. Just to your point about being normal, you've been to my office. What I loved about this office, I'm here in just a nondescript office building, 2 insurance agencies, financial planner, 2 CPAs, and me.
And
Right?
the psychic.
It's right,
Um,
I just fit in because it makes. I don't want you to walk in. The office is well lit,
yeah,
right? I
it's very
didn't just
comfortable.
very comfortable, and that's all on purpose, just so
Yeah.
you come in. I want to be a good ambassador. I want you to be open to the whole process.
Yeah. And what about for all of those folks who are watching from other places? Tell us about some of the stuff that you do online.
So we're getting ready to do online stuff. Have not been doing a lot of online, but I just feel
Well,
like
you
the
do
world.
with us sometimes. Every
I
once in a
do
while,
with
you
you
see
for
us.
sure.
Yeah.
With yeah, anything lately has been through Awkwardly Zen, um, but that's coming soon. I have a 3 class set that I sell online. You can also get that through my website, and it's the basics of psychic development that you can do anywhere.
Yeah.
Reasonably priced. Take a class, and it's MP3. Back it up. Listen to the parts that you liked again over and over and over. I think this is all about on a 30,000 foot level. It's about doing this regularly,
Mhm.
right? It's anything. If you want to, lose weight or find a companion or change a profession or whatever, it's about taking constant steps in that direction. So,
Yeah.
all of my work, both I hope my personal work and for my classes and things, is about take the next step, take the next step, find out what's behind that door, find out what's behind that door. Not that, and none of those doors are the destination, but those doors can block you, just like you said. Then you don't want to change. You don't want to get rid of the business cards, that you bought, because you don't want to have to change it.
Yeah.
Throw them out. Buy what resonates now with you, and that'll change for me. If it changes next week, then I'll get new business cards.
Totally, absolutely. And then as far as your readings go, because you are a medium, can you tell everyone kind of what they could expect if they did a reading with you or a
Sure.
session?
Actually, I use both the word medium and psychic. So the mediumship stuff, really in 10 seconds or less, friends, family, loved ones, spirit guides, guardian angels, talking to me with messages for you. And the word medium actually comes, it's actually a good use of the word. A phone cord, when we used to have cords that were phones that recorded, that phone cord was a medium. It
Mm,
sent the signals down regardless of whether it was a wrong number or a fax machine or your mom,
yeah.
right? It just, everything came down the wire. So as a medium, I just opened myself up, and as these energies come forward, I share the messages with folks. That's mediumship at its like basic level.
Yeah, I love that. And do you do that online if someone wanted to?
Yeah, I do Zoom and by phone. I have a client I read for regularly in Mumbai, India, and I laugh because I'm like, what a world I live in that I have a client in Mumbai, 12 and a half hours. So I either read for her at 7:30 in the morning or 7:30 at night, my time.
Right.
And and it is just as easy a conversation as it is with you, and as easy a reading as if she were sitting in the office with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I love, again, about the technology age and the fact that I stepped into so much during the COVID time. I- That just was natural. It had to happen that way, and so it's so easy for me to read online because of that. And also, and it's not any different than when I read in person. So I think it's great that there's so many people who are willing to do that, and it allows people all over the world to find you because I
Yes.
think that's one of my biggest passions is, if you only stay in your one little area, your market is so much smaller, and it's not even about making money. It's about the people who need you, the people who need that message and who are going to resonate and connect with you. So I think it's a great thing to be able to do that. And they can find you all on your website. So tell us
Yes,
again.
everything. Denver-psychic.com. And that's a dash, not a DASH.
Perfect. That's the actual like thing, not the
The
word.
thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And one thing I will also say is make sure that you are keeping track of Charles on Meetup if you are a Meetup person. You still posting your stuff on there? Yes.
Everything.
Okay. And what's your Meetup called?
Denver Psychic Development. And
Denver
it's
Psychic Development.
meetup/Denver Psychic.
Yep. So you can check that out there. Make sure you're watching website because sometimes does some great posts on there, some blogs that, and Charles is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. So I always am entertained by whatever it is that he puts out. So, well, Charles, any last thoughts for everybody?
No, I appreciate being on here. I love, if you're drawn to this, I guess my last word, I say no, but then, this is traditional. No, I don't
Then
have
you
any
didn't
last
realize
words,
where
but
we are. Yeah.
45 minutes later, you're like, dude, I already stopped the recording.
This is why our lunches go a long time
Yeah.
when we go to lunch because both of us are like, but then,
We have a whole shift change of waiters, right?
yes,
Sally's left, but if you need any more iced tea or coffee, I'll get that for you. Right.
right.
Really, final words. If this is something that you're passionate about and something that you are interested in, just follow your interests. Don't be confined to trying to make sure it's the right thing. I know we're all busy, but
Yeah.
don't make your spiritual path a job.
Yeah.
Have fun with it, right? And you'll, like we talked about with you, right? We're going to say, well, I'm Mary, I'm a psychic. Someone's going to raise their hand. So I thought you were a tarot reader.
Right.
No
No.
one, no one pays any attention to that.
Yeah, and even the putting it out there, a really interesting thing happened to me this week. I always thought that my old muggle job was not something I could talk about or present to these people. And out of the blue, a former board member from like 10 years ago at a project I was doing in a town that I would not have said this out loud, booked a reading with me. And it was beautiful. It was so much fun to sit down with her and get to connect with her on this totally different level and watching her watch me do what I do. It was really enjoyable. So you never know, you guys, you never know.
You don't. And if you find the right language, you can talk to people about this. It's when, the model for me, if you think about any like crazy fundamentalist Christian who they got to beat you down with their terms, right?
Yeah.
Then understand what that process is and don't do that to other people.
100%. If you don't like it, they won't like it. Like, don't,
Right.
I'm all about that. Please don't shove anything at me. That's one of my favorite things. Like, I'll always wear crystals and I wait for someone to be like, oh, I like your necklace. And then I'm like, you are one of me. And then there's a conversation, right? So,
They
uh,
just come out.
right. And they'll come out, or like lately with all the young people, they all have tattoos randomly on their arms. And instantly I can see a spiritual tattoo. So, like, if you know that, if you know that there's something in agreement, then you can start that conversation. But I'm not going to walk in and say, you should believe in fairies and dragons. And no, like, because I don't want someone walking into me and saying, you should believe in this and this and this. So why would I want to do that? Like, be gentle, y'all. Be gentle. All right. Well, thank you so much, Charles, for coming on today. It was so much fun. I'm sure we'll have you on again. And all the ways to contact Charles will be in the notes. So make sure you watch for that. And we'll see you next time. Good luck out there.
Thanks.